Hey there, I'm Sharon Welch, and welcome to A Brave Journey, the podcast to help you throw out those legacy belief and identity stories that you've been lugging around on autopilot for decades, so you can jump back in the driver's seat of your aliveness again. When you change your mind, you change your life. Are you ready? Let's get into it. It'll be fun. Happiness does not exist out there. Is that what it sounded like in your head when you read the title of this episode of my podcast? This is one of those instances where word emphasis matters. How I want you to hear that sentence is happiness does not exist out there. I have been thinking about this topic because the Gallup World Poll just came out with 2024 results. One of the outputs of that poll is the World Happiness Index. So, some very interesting things out of this year's study. I mean, first of all, the United States dropped down in the global ranking from 15th happiest down to 23rd. I thought that was really interesting. And, the other thing is that it showed that people over 60 have quite a bit higher levels of well-being and happiness when compared to younger people. In fact, people over 60 and their happiness level, that was ranked 10th in the world, the US was. But what's interesting is they're seeing a big decline in younger adolescents, young adults in the US, a big decline in their self-reported well-being. So people, I would say under the age of 30. So that's sort of been a new trend that's happening, which is interesting, right? So you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, these people, they have their whole lives in front of them. What could be causing this? So I was just really, really curious. Now, one thing to understand is it's sort of a standard trend in this index to see what they call a U curve. So we're used to seeing the bell curve in school, right? Where there's the people who do really poorly. That's a small percentage. You get to the middle where most people do. And then you get back down to the other side of the curve for the people that do really well and get the highest scores. The U curve shows that, younger people tend to score very high on the well-being and happiness index, and that declines to its lowest point in a person's midlife, and then it goes back up again as you get over the age of 60 into your golden years. So that's just sort of a standard, which makes sense, right? Because you figure children they don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They just, they go about their business, they play, they make believe, they get their needs met. They don't have complex relationships. They don't have a job they go to every day. Makes sense. Kids in general are pretty happy. And then as sort of the realities of adulthood and the complexities of living in a society, as those sort of pile onto us, our happiness to some extent erodes from when we were children. And then after we move through that and back into our golden years over the age of 60, whether it's because we've gained more perspective or because we've now learned to simplify our lives or we've retired and we can do what we want, the happiness index goes back up. So that part makes sense. But what's really interesting is now they're seeing in that period of time where you should have a pretty high happiness index, more in the beginning of the U curve, it's actually now lower than the happiness curve for older adults. So this apparently is pretty new. And it just made me wonder, what is it that would cause the happiness of those under 30 to decline so much over the last several years? And I have to think that to some extent, it's because we are all overloaded with all of these things out there that are supposed to make us happy. We're either told that what those things are, and then we find ourselves trying to live up to them, or we see a curated experience of someone's life who appears to have it all together because they've selectively decided what they're going to share on social media, for example. So, for younger people, age 30 and below, we know that they're very, very much connected throughout the world through their devices, through the types of experiences they choose to have, all of these things. And so I think they may be bearing the brunt of that fire hose of external expectations about what happiness is or should be or must be. And if that's the case, then it makes sense why happiness and well-being, that sense of that, has seen a pretty, at least a noticeable decline in this Gallup poll. I mean, let's acknowledge the emotional and mental toll being bombarded day in and day out with watching people apparently living these glamorous, shiny lives and being bombarded with marketing messages about this latest gadget or experience or dream date that will make your life perfect and complete. We get this input all day long. And so then we start to see or try to determine where we fit in that measurement. How do we measure up to all these people leading perfect lives and all of these lists of products and experiences and people that we need to surround ourselves with because we've been told that's what's going to make us happy? It's not going to go well, right? And then on top of that, we do right now tend to live in a world where we're sort of pitted against one another. So there's a competition factor that says we got to get on it. We got to keep up with the Joneses. We got to be out there doing all of this stuff, because if we can't or if we don't, then we've failed at happiness. Just add it to the list of things that we failed at. So it just really seems pretty clear that all of those things that are outside of us are very likely the things that are causing us to not be as happy or to not have as high of a sense of well-being. Those things outside of us are robbing us of our joy. And you've probably seen many times, a lot of people have written about the phenomenon that happens when you do go after some big goal that was really super important to you. Think about, for example, there's a promotion that you want to get at your work, and you work so hard and you're getting the recognition, and if you could just get this dream job, I mean, that's it. You're just going to be ecstatic. You're going to be happy. Your life is complete. And so you get the promotion. But then what happens? Sure, of course you're excited about it, you're proud, you're happy, as well you should be. What's the very next thought? What's next? Because happiness, joy, well-being, it can't be a destination. It's not a destination. It's impossible, because there's always going to be a next thing, a next thing, a next thing. So there is no final finish line. There is no tick off the last thing on the list and you have arrived. As humans, we always wonder what the next thing is. And that's why we cannot use those external factors. We cannot use those external things as a way to measure or validate or compare for our level of happiness and joy. The external stuff will always have a yes, but what's next? The external things will always cause you to either look behind you on your journey and regret certain things that seem to have caused you to miss out on one of those external things, or it causes you to look too far up the road at what's coming in the future and worrying about how you're going to get that, how you're going to handle that. It's a never-ending cycle. Using the external world, using external input to determine your own sense of well-being and happiness it's a cruel joke that you're playing on yourself. You can't do it. Instead, it's important to understand that happiness is an inside job. Happiness, contentedness, is something that has to come from inside you, and it cannot be tied to a rule or a thing or an opinion from anywhere else outside of your own body. For true wellness, for true contentedness, that's what it has to be. Now, I can imagine what you're thinking right now. Okay, great. Here we go again. I've got to get into some kind of woo-woo mindset practice so that I stop looking behind, so I stop looking in front, so that I can be present and appreciate what I have, blah, 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 blah. I get it. And of course, there are many things that you can be doing. You've heard them everywhere. You've heard them from me related to getting present in your body with breath or meditating or movement or journaling. There are a lot of different mindset tactics you could use. But I'm not your meditation guru. I've tried lots of things. Some work, some don't. What I want for you to hear is something a little different. I have a friend who I just love spending time with, and he's done a lot of mindset work. He's done a lot of mental discipline work through martial arts. So that's another way that you can really grow your mental capacity and resilience. And he said to me one time that the problem, or the thing that he sees the most that caused people to get in this cycle of constantly disappointing themselves from a happiness and contentedness perspective, is not really internalizing and understanding the concept of enough. And so what I mean by that is, related to all of these external inputs that we're getting about what it takes to be happy, what you're going to have to do, what you're going to have, who you're going to have to know, is it does set us up on this hamster wheel of what's next, which means those things that we're being told will make us happy are really only a starting bid. From there, we'll get to that, and there's always the what's next. The ante is always being upped. And so, aside from all of the arguably woo-woo things that you can be doing from a mindset perspective, which also work for some people, not everybody resonates with that. But logically, and a little more maybe ground-based, is you can really examine how you define enough. Enough is going to be where you find contentedness. And when you can get off of the cycle of, I have to have the next greatest thing and the next greatest thing and the next greatest thing, and I'll truly be happy when I get this 100 steps ahead. I'll truly be happy when I have this certain amount of money. I'll truly be happy. And you get to a point where you understand enough for you, not enough for anybody else outside of you, not enough according to social media, not enough according to the advertisers who are trying to paint an ideal life for you. But when you understand what enough is for you, that is where you find joy, happiness, peace, contentedness. And so one way that you can do that is a little exercise in being present. So I had a coach a few years ago when I was much more of a toxic planner, and I spent much more time worried about what the next thing was going to be, or what, horrible circumstance could befall me, or how much money had to come in next month, or surely I was going to die. And she said, when you get into that cycle and when you start to get spun up about the what's next, look down at your feet. When you look down at your feet, what you are recognizing is where you are right now. Your feet are always with you, and they're always planted on the ground. So when you find yourself getting a little anxious, getting a little uptight about what's next, look at your feet. So there's step one. Step two is once you have acknowledged where you are in the present moment, do a scan, a physical, emotional, and mental scan of where you are right in this moment. And most of the time, you'll be able to answer the basic questions, which lead you to what is enough, with a yes. There are obviously outliers. But in general, if you can scan your environment and you have your health, you've had enough to eat, you have a roof over your head, you have people who love you, in this very moment, you have exactly the amount of money you need, even if that amount is nothing. If you don't have a bill due right in this particular second, you don't have something to spend money on, then you have exactly enough money. So it's that kind of thinking about where are you right now and do you have enough right now? Don't think about what you missed out on before, what you messed up on before and were deprived of. Don't think about what you think you're going to have in the next hour, the next week, the next year. Don't think about any of those things. Look at your feet, ground yourself where you are, and ask yourself, do I have what I need? Do I have enough right now? If you can do that on a consistent basis and really internalize the intent of that exercise, what you're going to find is a much higher level of contentedness than when you were time traveling in your mind back and forth between what was in the past and what you're going to have to do in the future. And when I say time travel in your mind, I'm very purposeful about what I mean by that. There's a little limited series on Netflix called The Mind Explained. And in the episode that they were doing about memory, one of the things they talked about was how your critter brain, your monkey brain, is constantly time traveling, constantly using your energetic resources to time travel. It time travels to the past, it time travels to the future, imagining or remembering, usually in a flawed manner, all of the things that your ego thinks you need to be concerned about. So if you think about all of the travel that's happening in your conscious ego brain, it really is like time travel to the past, to the future, to the past, to the future, which are both things that you can't really do anything about. So this idea that you can have any sort of control as this little tiny human, this little tiny grain of sand in the cosmos, you spend all of this energy worried about the past, worried about the future, when the only thing you can be is right here, right now. So I think if you think about it in that way, and you figure out that if you really want to have control, if control is what makes you feel safe, control this moment right now. Be present in this moment, own this moment, and look at it and do a clear-eyed assessment of where you really are and what you really have in this moment. No qualifiers for what you had the last moment or what you're going to have the next moment. A clear-eyed assessment that says you have enough right now. You are okay right now. You can be happy right now. And it's only when we let that monkey brain, it's only when we let that critter brain go randomly time travel on autopilot without our permission that we rob ourselves of the potential to have the experience of joy and happiness and contentedness right now. Enjoy the delicious bite of food. Enjoy the hug from someone that you love. Enjoy observing your beautiful natural environment. Enjoy the accomplishment of doing good work that's meaningful to you in this moment. That's how you do that. And so it is a little bit of a mindfulness muscle workout. But maybe if you think about it in terms of seeing really what is enough and not allowing that definition to be clouded by trying to keep up with some imaginary standard or trying to reconcile some perceived failure in the past, if you can do that, then I think you just really remove a lot of the barriers to feeling happy right now. There is zero reason why you need to put off happiness, abundance, joy, contentedness enough. There's no reason you have to put that off for when you retire, or for when you get the next promotion, or for when you have the next child, for when you make the next $1,000, for when you lose the next 10 pounds. There is no reason. We put those limits on ourselves that says, if I do this, if I have this, then I can be happy. Or if I hadn't done this, or if I had done something differently in the past, that would have been when I could be happy, and now I've lost the opportunity. Really let that sink in for you. Because I think this is, to come back to the Gallup survey on the happiness index, I really think this is the cycle that the majority of people have become stuck in, because we are so connected, because we do have visibility of some sliver of other people's lives, or some contrived view of what life is and should look like from advertisers and marketers. And so when we're on autopilot, we almost can't help ourselves. We immediately start measuring where we fall in the spectrum. And that's what steals our joy. So my challenge to you is, look at your feet. Where are you right now? What is enough? What can you enjoy in this moment right now without allowing it to be ruined by something that happened in the past, or something that has a 99% chance of not even happening in the future? What can you connect to right now that is enough, that gives you happiness? Because I think that's the only way we're going to get past this hamster wheel. It's really the only way. So try it out, see if it works. It's something that requires constant practice, because it's not how we're used to doing things. We're not used to looking to ourselves to be the expert in our own lives. We're not used to getting advice or any sort of example for how to live from ourselves. We get it from everyone else, but we forget that the only person who is an expert in us is us. And that's the advice and that's the experience that we dismiss. And I think we need to flip that around. So let me know how that works for you. I would love to hear your experiences with taking the time to look at your feet, because happiness really does not exist out there. It's inside all of us. So go forth and be happy. Hey, thanks for listening to A Brave Journey. I'm so happy we're here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review, and share this with a friend who could benefit too. See you next time.